Imagine you're standing in a client's kitchen after just a grueling 2-hour session.
Oh, yeah, the classic kitchen trap.
Right. And the client's mom, who you've been working with for 6 months now, she hands you a beautifully wrapped, like, $15 gift card to a local coffee shop.
Yeah, she's beaming, right?
Exactly, beaming, telling you how much your behavioral interventions have completely changed their family's life. And it's like, if you say yes to that little piece of plastic, you might actually be violating an international ethics code.
Yep.
But then if you say no, you might permanently damage this therapeutic rapport that you spent half a year building.
And that specific moment right there in the kitchen, that is where theory violently collides with reality.
Absolutely.
Because when your primary tool for clinical change is, well, your own behavior and your ongoing relationship with the family, figuring out where the professional practitioner ends and the friendly human being begins, I mean, it's one of the most complex challenges in our whole field.
It really is. So welcome to today's deep dive, everyone.
Hmm.
We are navigating the absolute minefield of professional boundaries.
It is a minefield.
And if you're a curious practitioner looking to, sharpen your clinical instincts, or maybe a student furiously prepping for your board exams, you are in the exact right place.
For sure.
Today, our mission is to master BCBA Foundation's task list item E.7, which is multiple relationships and professional boundaries. And we're not just going to sit here and memorize a dry list of rules.
No, no one wants to do that.
Right. We're looking at the actual behavioral mechanisms behind these rules. We really want to understand how, like, crossing these lines creates competing contingencies that just destroy clinical objectivity.
Because when you understand the underlying function of a boundary, you don't obviously have to blindly memorize the code.
Yeah.
The ethical choice just it makes intuitive behavioral sense at that point.
Which is exactly what we want. We've got a massive stack of source material driving our analysis today, too. We're pulling directly from the BACB Ethics Code for Behavior Analysts, the foundational Bailey and Birch textbook, Ethics for Behavior Analysts.
That was classic.
Such a classic. Also, the Workbook of Ethical Case Scenarios, various mock exam questions, and the BHCOE Standards of Excellence.
That's a lot to get through.
It is, but we've got it covered. And for those of you actively studying, you can always access study guides, tools, and ABA resources through the stand.store/therapy services link we shared before.
Definitely check that out.
But today, we are doing the heavy analytical lifting for you.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's unpack this. Because while, ethics might sound like this dusty list of administrative don'ts, our sources reveal a landscape that is just filled with intense, really complicated human drama.
Oh, it really is. I mean, the rules we're looking at, they were written in response to real human behavior. They're reactionary.
Right.
Every single standard in that code exists because someone, somewhere, made just a spectacularly messy mistake that actively harmed a client.
Wow. Yeah, that puts it into perspective. So let's ground this by defining what we're actually talking about when we say multiple relationship.
Yeah, let's define it.
So the BACB glossary defines a multiple relationship, which, by the way, a lot of older practitioners might still call a dual relationship, as a commingling of two or more of a behavior analyst's roles.
Right.
So you have your behavioral professional role, and it gets tangled up with a personal role, whether that's with a client, a stakeholder, a supervisee, or a trainee.
And that commingling, that is the genesis of a conflict of interest.
Yeah.
As behavior analysts, we're trained to analyze the function of behavior, right, and apply interventions objectively.
Right, objectivity is key.
Exactly. And the moment a personal relationship is introduced, your objectivity is just severely compromised by a completely different set of social reinforcement contingencies.
Yeah, it's like being a health inspector at a restaurant that's owned by your sibling.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Right, like even if you swear up and down that you're going to be objective and you take your calibrated thermometer out to check the internal temperature of the chicken.
You're still a sibling.
Exactly.
Huh.
The personal dynamic makes true clinical objectivity impossible. You are always going to view that chicken and the potential health grade through the lens of your lifelong relationship with your brother or sister.
Absolutely.
Like, you might hesitate to give a failing grade because you know they're struggling to pay their mortgage right now.
And in our field, your clinical objectivity is that thermometer.
Oh, wow, yeah.
If your judgment is impaired by a personal connection, your behavioral interventions are compromised. The client stops receiving the most effective evidence-based treatment, and that is their fundamental right.
Right, which is why Standard 1.11 explicitly mandates that behavior analysts must avoid entering into or creating multiple relationships.
Yep, clear as day.
But what I find fascinating about the updated code, though, is how it acknowledges the messy reality of human interaction.
Yeah, the updates were huge.
Because for a long time, the field operated under a strict $0 gift policy.
Which was so tough.
It was. Behavior analysts were essentially forced to act like unfeeling robots, like refusing a glass of water or a homemade cookie in a client's home. But the current code 1.1 shifted this to a $10 limit.
Right.
The sources give these highly specific examples, actually. Like,
Yeah.
you can accept a knitted hat from a client's grandma.
So cute.
Or you can give a small, inexpensive stuffed animal to a client at the end of services.
What's fascinating here is that the board recognized that a draconian $0 policy was actively harming clinical relationships in certain cultural contexts.
Oh, for sure.
Like refusing a small token of appreciation during holidays or events like Lunar New Year, it can be deeply, deeply offensive.
Yeah, you don't want to insult the family.
Exactly. It can irreparably damage the rapport and trust that is absolutely necessary for the behavioral interventions to even work. So the $10 limit introduces cultural sensitivity while still maintaining a firm ceiling.
But wait, I have to push back on the mechanics of this a little bit.
Okay, go for it.
Why an exact $10 limit? I go back to my opening scenario with the $15 coffee shop gift card. Why split hairs over $5?
I get that question all the time.
I mean, is a $15 card really going to destroy my clinical objectivity while a $10 knitted hat is perfectly fine?
Well, the arbitrary number isn't the core issue here.
Sure.
It's the establishment of an objective, measurable threshold. That's what matters. If you leave it open to interpretation like just saying, oh, small gifts are okay.
Human nature takes over.
Exactly. Human nature will gradually stretch that definition. Today, it's a $15 coffee card. Next month, it's a $50 restaurant voucher. And suddenly, it's like tickets to a concert.
Yeah, the slippery slope.
Setting an explicit low monetary limit completely removes the guesswork and the gradual drift.
That makes total sense. And the sources are also incredibly explicit about the danger of cumulative gifts.
Oh, yes. That's a big one.
Like, even if every single gift is under $10, if they become a regular occurrence, we have a massive problem.
Because that touches on the pure psychology of reinforcement.
Right.
If a family is buying you, say, a $7 lunch every single Tuesday, your behavior as a clinician is slowly being shaped by that tangible reinforcement. You subconsciously begin to view that family as a source of ongoing value.
And that means I might hesitate to have a difficult conversation with those parents.
Precisely.
If I need to tell them, hey, you're failing to implement the behavior plan correctly, I might soften the blow or just avoid the conversation entirely because I don't want to lose my free Tuesday lunch.
Yep.
My avoidance behavior is negatively reinforced by escaping the awkwardness, and the client's progress just completely stalls.
Which means the client is now paying the price for your compromised boundaries.
Man, that's heavy.
It is. Intangible gifts are easy to spot, right? But the most insidious boundary crossings are entirely invisible. They rarely start with money.
What do they start with?
They start with everyday, seemingly harmless favors.
Oh, man. This brings us to a wildly illuminating case study from Bailey and Birch's text that completely changed how I view this.
The minivan.
The minivan, yes. Yeah. So a behavior analyst is providing home-based services, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the client's mother asks for a simple favor. She says, I need to drive my older kid to soccer practice. Can you just conduct the hour of language therapy in the back of the family minivan while I drive?
And on the surface, the mother is just trying to balance a totally chaotic family schedule.
Totally relatable.
Right. And a therapist operating from a place of just everyday social etiquette thinks, well, friends do favors for friends. I'm here for an hour anyway. The location shouldn't matter.
So the therapist agrees. She climbs into the back of a cluttered, moving minivan to run a highly specialized behavioral program.
Which is just a nightmare.
It is. And of course, because she said yes once, the mother asks again the next week. And before the therapist knows it, minivan therapy is the new normal.
See, the therapist fell back on her personal ethics history rather than professional ethics.
Yeah.
By trying to be nice, she obliterated the clinical effectiveness of the session. A moving vehicle is chaotic. There's unpredictable noise. The older sibling is probably distracting the client.
Instructional control is completely lost.
Completely. And any semblance of a controlled environment for data collection just vanishes.
Not to mention the massive breach of confidentiality. if the older sibling brings a friend along for the ride.
Exactly.
The therapist basically sacrificed the client's right to effective, evidence-based treatment just to avoid the temporary social discomfort of saying no to a stressed-out parent.
And the power dynamic in that relationship, subtly but permanently, shifted right there.
Wow, yeah.
The mother is now dictating the clinical environment based on her convenience, rather than the behavior analyst dictating the environment based on clinical necessity.
It's like the power dynamic is like gravity.
Ooh, I like that.
It's this invisible force that's just constantly pulling on the therapeutic relationship. If you aren't firmly grounded in your professional role, you're going to slip down that slope. And that gravitational pull is arguably even stronger when we look at supervisor relationships within our own field.
Definitely. Code 1.3 deals directly with coercive and exploitative relationships, and it specifically highlights the massive power differential between a supervising BCBA and a registered behavior technician, or RBT.
Right.
The supervisor holds evaluative authority over the subordinate's career, their supervised hours, and, honestly, their livelihood.
And the workbook outlines scenarios that go way beyond, like a supervisor inappropriately asking an RBT to pick up their dry cleaning.
Oh, it gets much darker.
Yeah. We're looking at a BCBA pressuring an RBT to systematically falsify data on a behavior program. The intervention is clearly failing, but the BCBA doesn't want to admit it to the clinical director or the parents, so they coerce the RBT into tweaking the numbers.
And the RBT is trapped.
Literally trapped.
The unequal power dynamic makes it incredibly difficult for the subordinate to refuse or to blow the whistle, because if they say no, they risk losing their job, getting a poor performance evaluation, or having their certification hours withheld.
It's extortion, basically.
It is. The code strictly prohibits abusing this authority because the subordinate's ability to freely consent or refuse is just deeply compromised.
I saw another scenario focusing on the agency level, too, where corporate administration coerces a BCBA to double bill clients for intensive one-on-one therapy.
Ugh, the billing fraud.
Yeah, when in reality, those clients are just sitting together in a loosely monitored social skills group. And the BCBA is threatened with a loss of their caseload if they don't comply.
See, whether it's a parent asking for a favor in a minivan or a clinic director demanding fraudulent billing, the mechanism is the same.
Competing contingencies.
Exactly. The professional's mandate to protect the client is being actively suppressed by the threat of punishment or the promise of social reinforcement from an authority figure.
So, if accepting a small favor creates this subtle gravitational pull on your professional boundaries, romantic entanglements create a complete black hole where clinical objectivity cannot possibly exist.
Oh, a total black hole.
The rules surrounding romance and sexual relationships in Code 1.14 are incredibly rigid, and the case studies show us exactly why.
Because we are dealing with vulnerable populations, the cooling-off periods mandated by the board are not suggestions.
No, they are not.
They're hard lines drawn to protect individuals who rely on our services.
Let's lay out the precise numbers here. A behavior analyst cannot have a romantic or sexual relationship with a current client, stakeholder, trainee, or supervisee under any circumstances.
Zero exceptions.
And if you want to date a former client or stakeholder, you must wait a minimum of 2 years from the date the professional relationship officially ended.
And that 2-year period is so crucial. It ensures that the residual power dynamic, the intense reliance the family may have had on your clinical expertise, it ensures that has fully dissipated.
It has to be gone.
Right. The professional relationship must be completely extinguished before a personal one can even begin.
Now, the rules for supervisees are slightly different, right? If you want to date a former supervisee, you have to wait until you can document that all professional duties and evaluations have completely ended. And going the other way, you cannot accept someone as a supervisee if you've dated them in the past 6 months.
Because that 6-month rule prevents a supervisor from bringing unresolved romantic or emotional baggage into a professional evaluative setting.
Makes total sense.
You cannot objectively critique the clinical skills of someone you just broke up with, or, let's be real, someone you're secretly hoping to get back together with.
Oh, man. And this all sounds very theoretical until you read Case 1.11b from the workbook, which is honestly terrifying.
It's a rough one.
It really is. A BCBA starts advising a father on his autistic daughter's individualized education program, and they don't even have a formal contract.
Which is a massive red flag right out of the gate.
Huge. And this informal advisory relationship just rapidly morphs into a full-blown romantic affair.
The lack of an initial formal boundary created a vacuum, and personal intimacy just rushed in to fill it.
But it gets so much worse. The parents end up going through a vicious divorce.
Yeah.
And during the legal proceedings, this BCBA actively encourages the father to oppose the mother
Hmm.
and uses her specialized knowledge to help him build a case to limit and reduce the child's special needs therapies.
Just despite the mother.
Just as by her.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this is the absolute nightmare scenario that the ethics code is designed to prevent.
Yeah.
The BCBA completely weaponized their professional expertise. They use their deep understanding of special education systems to seduce a vulnerable parent and then deployed that same clinical knowledge to actively inflict harm on the mother.
And strip essential services from the child caught in the crossfire.
Exactly. When judgment is hijacked by romantic entanglement, the client, in this case, a child losing their therapy, is always the one who pays the price.
That is a case of blatant malicious sabotage. But our sources also highlight how easily these boundaries can be tested by, modern accidental collisions.
Oh, the dating app scenario.
Yes. There's this fascinating scenario in the mock exams regarding Tobias, a supervising BCBA who is just swiping on a dating app on a Friday night.
As one does.
Right. And he matches with someone named Victor. They start chatting, and Tobias suddenly realizes that Victor is a member of the new training cohort he is currently supervising at the clinic.
Oh, no.
And Victor messages him and says, "Hey, I'm taking my RBT exam this weekend. Let's grab drinks and celebrate after I pass."
See, it is a perfectly modern complication, two adults matching on an algorithm, but the ethical mandate requires an immediate, unequivocal shutdown of that interaction.
But my instinct here is to ask, why does it have to be so absolute?
Well,
I mean, they just matched on an app. It's just a celebratory drink. Can't Tobias just go get a beer and agree to keep things professional at the clinic on Monday?
no, because Tobias holds evaluative authority over Victor's professional progression.
Okay, right.
Even a single, ostensibly innocent date introduces a profound competing contingency. Think about it. Suppose they go out, they have a great time, and a mutual attraction forms.
Yeah.
On Monday morning, Victor makes a significant clinical error while running a behavior plan. Will Tobias correct him with the same rigorous, objective standard he applies to the rest of the cohort?
Probably not. He's going to soften the feedback because he wants Victor to like him. He wants a second date.
Precisely. His evaluative judgment is impaired. He fails to properly train Victor, which means Victor's future clients are now at risk of receiving subpar behavioral interventions.
Wow, the ripple effect.
It's massive. Tobias must immediately inform Victor of the boundary, step back from the personal interaction, and ensure his supervision remains strictly professional.
Okay, so we've covered the catastrophic black holes and the dating app collisions. But this brings us to a highly practical dilemma.
Okay, what is it?
You can't control the algorithm on a dating app, and you certainly cannot control how a parent or stakeholder is going to act in their own living room.
Very true.
So how does the listener actively manage these messy, unavoidable situations when they inevitably happen?
Well, you can't prevent the boundary from being tested. Your professional survival depends entirely on how you respond in the moment of impact.
Let's look at the managing mom scenario from the case studies. You're providing ADA services in a family's home. The mother of your client is going through a terrible time, and she starts spending 90% of your clinical session crying on your shoulder,
Oh, yeah.
venting about her failing marriage, and treating you like her personal therapist and best friend.
Because behavior analysts naturally possess strong interpersonal skills. We're trained to build rapport, to be empathetic, and to pair ourselves with positive reinforcement.
Yeah, we're good listeners.
We are. So it is incredibly common for isolated, stressed parents to latch onto that warmth.
I have to be completely honest here.
Yeah.
If a mother is standing in front of me sobbing about her life falling apart, my fundamental human instinct is to comfort her.
Of course it is.
How do I switch back to being a clinician and enforce a boundary without sounding like a cold, unfeeling robot reading from a textbook?
Like, pardon me, ma'am, but BACB Standard 1.11 dictates I cannot comfort you.
Right, you can't say that.
You can't just ignore a crying person.
You don't ignore them, and you don't turn into a robot. But you also cannot allow the child's clinical time to be consumed by the parent's emotional needs.
So what's the move?
The most effective strategy outlined by Bailey and Birch is to be proactive rather than reactive.
Ah.
You utilize a crucial tool called the Declaration of Professional Practices and Procedures.
Okay, so this is a formal written document, right?
Yes. You never wait for the awkward, tearful moment to establish the rules.
Smart.
During the very first intake meeting, before services even begin, you sit down with the family and review this document together. It explicitly, but compassionately, outlines that the ethics code forbids personal relationships, giving behavioral advice to friends, or accepting social invitations.
And they agree to it up front.
You have the parents explicitly agree to this framework. So the boundary's already built before it ever gets tested.
Exactly. So 3 months later, when the mother starts venting about her marriage, you don't have to invent a boundary on the fly.
Oh, that's such a relief.
You can validate her feelings briefly as a human being, but then gently pivot back to the document you both agreed upon. You remind her with warmth that to give her child the absolute best care possible, your focus has to remain entirely on the clinical data and the behavioral progress.
That completely takes the personal rejection out of it. It's not, I don't care about your problems. It's my ethical obligation to your child requires me to focus here.
Perfectly said.
But what happens when someone puts you on the spot out of nowhere? Let's say you're standing in the hallway at your clinic, and your clinical director asks you to quickly alter some billing codes to maximize insurance payouts, like the double billing scenario.
The hallway ambush.
Yes. They're staring at you, waiting for an answer. The pressure is immense.
When faced with a sudden, ethically murky demand from a supervisor or a stakeholder, the sources provide one brilliantly simple, universally applicable piece of advice. Buy some time.
Just buy time, like hit the pause button.
You hit pause. You do not need to deliver a perfectly cited, bulletproof ethical argument in 3 seconds while standing in a hallway.
Thank goodness.
You simply say, let me look at my schedule and get back to you this afternoon. Or, I need to review the file. I will email you in an hour.
That is incredibly freeing. It instantly breaks the coercive momentum of the request.
It relieves the immediate social pressure and the instinctual avoidance behavior. Buying time allows you to step away, open up the ethics code, consult with a trusted mentor or colleague, and formulate a professional boundary-setting response without that deer-in-the-headlights panic.
So, to bring all of these threads together, whether you're furiously making flashcards to pass your BCBA exam, or you're just trying to navigate a genuinely tricky Tuesday afternoon at the clinic with a chatty parent or a demanding boss.
Yeah.
Mastering multiple relationships is not about avoiding punishment from an invisible certification board. It's fundamentally about protecting the behavioral mechanisms that make your interventions work.
Exactly.
It's about keeping your clinical judgment unclouded, ensuring that the competing contingencies of personal relationships never prevent you from delivering the life-changing care your clients deserve.
That is the ultimate function of the code. We maintain professional boundaries not to be distant, but to protect the integrity of the science and the vulnerability of the client.
Well said.
But, this raises a fascinating paradox for you to mull over as we conclude our analysis.
I love a good paradox. Lay it on us.
As behavior analysts, you are explicitly trained to act as a highly effective reinforcer for your clients.
True.
You utilize your warmth, your smiling, your high fives, and your enthusiastic praise to build intense rapport and modify behavior. You're clinically obligated to be an engaging, reinforcing presence.
Right. If you're working with a kid, you're supposed to be the most fun, reinforcing person in the room.
Precisely. So the question becomes, how do you master the complex art of being a human reinforcer, deeply connecting with clients and families to drive behavioral change, while simultaneously maintaining enough emotional distance to never cross the line into a dual relationship?
Wow.
Where exactly is the invisible, razor-thin line between therapeutic warmth and personal intimacy?
That is the ultimate tightrope walk of our profession. You have to somehow build a fence that is strong enough to completely protect your clinical objectivity, but transparent enough that your client can still feel the genuine warmth of your care.
It's a delicate balance.
It really is. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into professional boundaries. Keep exploring your source materials, keep questioning the contingencies around you, and keep thinking critically about the invisible lines in your own daily practice.